half the truth is in darkness. I think that a lot of people are afraid of, going into the darkness in any way because they don't understand its purpose and its reason for being there. But darkness is just as important as lightness. We shouldn't necessarily be in darkness just as much as in lightness. Really, you just have to be willing and open to exploring darkness and not being afraid of it, because there's nothing to be afraid of. It's the polarities, it's darkness and lightness. It's just the way the world is. It's just the way the energies are. um, and darkness doesn't have to mean, you know the worst things ever, and it doesn't have to mean depression and all that. It can just mean that we understand what is going on the other end of the spectrum, and that we will understand ourselves better once we explore both sides. And we have to explore them regularly, whatever comes our way. We have to be open to, oh, should, I be looking into that even though it's dark, or should I be exploring that part of me even though it's dark, or just not being afraid to be being open to those two um, those two different extremes. So this movie is called Inside Out, and it's about emotions. And so here you have joy on the right and sadness on the left. And the basically the point of the movie, there's all the emotions inside this little girl's head. So that's where they are right now. And there's more than these two. There's anger, fear, and disgust. And then there's joy and sadness. And the point of the movie really is that Joy doesn't understand the purpose for sadness being there. She doesn't understand, why she does certain things that she does. And she basically suppresses her, and she's kind of like, go into the corner, and we don't really need you right now because you're making things worse, right? She's just looking out for the girl. She wants the girl to be happy all the time. That's the goal for her. And so she doesn't really want sadness around until the end, basically, where Joy, cries about something and she becomes really sad. And then she starts to understand that without sadness, there's no joy. And then without joy, there's no sadness. And they're important for each other. And Joy understands that at the end. And she basically understands that sadness is her equal. She's no less and no higher. She's her equal. She's just as important. And we always think joy is more important. We always think, the positive things are more important. But the negative things are just as important. So 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 Joy at the end understands that sadness is, holds the same place that joy does in this little girl's life. So my point here is that lightness is just as important as darkness. And we have to appreciate both sides, and we have to understand why we have two sides, and what the darkness means in our everyday life, and what the darkness means when it comes our way. We shouldn't reject it. We should you know um, we should appreciate it. We should accept it, and we should try to understand it. If we don't understand both sides, we are missing half of the truth. So in lightness, there is the truth, just as in darkness. So in darkness and in lightness, there is the truth. In good and bad, in good and evil, in positive and negative, there is the truth. And I think just so many people run away from the truth because they don't want to embrace their dark side. And a dark side doesn't mean you have to be evil. It doesn't mean you have to be bad. It means you have to understand the side of you that is negative sometimes, right? We all have our own things, and inside of us is where all these things really lie. So even if you can live a life of really, very little bad in your life, that's great. But if you're still not embracing it as part of your life, as part of your world, as part of who you are, as part of what this entire life and universe is, then you are not really doing your job, because the truth is in both of these sides. So even if you have really mastered the positive side in your life, the positive, side of yourself, the positive side of life, the positive side of others, if you're not looking at the darker side, which is really just its polarity, then you are missing half the truth. And that truth is just as important as positive. It's just as important as what you learn on the positive side of things. You can learn a lot from yourself, about, the dark side of you, the negative side, the things that, come up in every day there's maybe something that you notice that you're like, oh, this is bad. But then you can be like, well, what does this mean? And what does this mean about life? And what does this mean about the universe? And what does this mean about people who do this? And you keep going, and just not being afraid of the darkness, and not having an adverse reaction to it, not having a reaction of like running away from it, or just kind of like having like a negative reaction to it, like having a negative reaction to darkness, having a negative reaction to negativity. That's what you need to learn from. I mean, if that doesn't tell you something, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, if you have a negative reaction to negativity, there's probably a problem in that. There's nothing wrong with darkness except that evil things lie there. But to understand evil things, we have to be able to explore the darkness and to explore negativity. So you might have conquered half the battle if you're a positive person, but you have to look at the dark side of life. And what will that, tell you? What will that show you? What kind of truths will you find when you look at the dark side of life? Not just the positive, and that you don't become evil, you don't become bad, you don't become negative. You just explore that. You explore that within yourself. You explore that within others. You explore that in this society, in this physical world. You explore it. You don't have to become it. You just have to explore it. And I cannot tell you how important it is. And since a young age, I explored it. But, I became it a lot, but I always got out of it and got onto better things. I always went up and up and up, but I wrote a lot of things, still to this day, I write things that are negative sometimes, but it doesn't mean that I'm a negative person, and it doesn't mean that I'm spreading negativity. It means that I'm spreading emotions. I'm spreading, angry emotions sometimes, sometimes sad emotions, but those things are important to feel. If you can't feel those things, if you can't really feel them, you're missing half the truth within yourself. You have to feel. You have to feel happiness. You have to feel sadness. You have to feel anger. You have to feel pleasure. You have to feel pain. You have to feel suffering. You have to feel those things sometimes. And, if you don't feel those things sometimes or regularly, whatever, you want to do, you are missing half the truth and half the point of life. You really are. So don't ever be afraid to explore yourself and explore your emotions, and encourage those people around you to explore their own emotions as well. Not to suppress their emotions, not to suppress the dark side of themselves, unless it is to an extreme where it's taking over their life. But try to find the balance. Always try to find the balance. So I'll leave it at that. Talk to you guys later.